You know how some families have a favorite child. Mine didn't just have a favorite, they had a queen, my sister, and the rest of us. We were just background characters in the epic tale of her life. It's wild to think I'm typing all this out while sitting poolside on my honeymoon. But this is the most healing thing I've done in years. My husband, who is way more excited about sharing this story on Reddit than about the resort cocktails, is cheering me on as I finally unload a lifetime of pain, betrayal, and, ultimately, revenge. This is my story, not his, though he's hovering over my shoulder like a supportive hawk. I don't have a Reddit account, and honestly, neither does he want this mess tied to his... So here I am, doing the honors, finally telling the truth about what it was like to grow up in a family that treated me like the unwanted second child just because I wasn't her. From the moment I could understand words, it was obvious my parents adored my sister, and not in a sweet, slightly favoring her kind of way. No, if she blamed me for something, they believed her on the spot. No investigation, no questions, punishment delivered. But when I tried to speak up about her behavior, even if I had proof, they brushed it off, gave her a slap on the wrist, and somehow still found a way to scold me too. My birthdays. I never got to choose the cake flavor. It always had to be what she liked. They claimed they forgot I didn't like it every single year. Vacations, outings, even random family plans, everything catered to her preferences. Meanwhile, I was the punching bag. At first, she ignored me. Then she turned hostile, especially when she hit her awkward early teen years and lost her social circle. I don't know what happened. Maybe her friends finally got sick of her cruelty, but she was suddenly alone and miserable. That's when she really zeroed in on me. I had friends. I was somewhat popular, so, of course, I became public enemy number one. Her accusations got more elaborate. My friends were bad influences, she said. And my parents, spinelessly loyal to their golden child, banned me from seeing anyone. Why can't you be more like your sister, they'd say. Why are you trying to run away from the family? The only thing that saved me from total social isolation was my extended family. My cousins, especially, became my lifeline. I'll never forget one family gathering. My cousins invited me to something, and when I sadly said, "I'm not allowed to go anywhere," they asked why. Without a filter, little me blurted out, "Because I'm not allowed to have friends if my sister doesn't." Word got around. The adults finally tore into my parents. I got grounded for lying, even though I'd told the truth. But oddly enough, after that, my parents relaxed the reins a bit, just a little, enough to breathe. Then came the school switch. My sister demanded a transfer, probably embarrassed that the family now knew she was a friendless tyrant. My parents, of course, obliged. More expensive school, longer commute. Didn't matter. If she wanted it, it happened. At her new school, she made some friends, but the torment never ended. She had tasted how powerful it was to manipulate my life, and she wasn't letting go. Her new friends joined in on the bullying. My parents saw it all as just teasing. I stopped inviting anyone over who would want to come to a house where they'd be accused of stealing or insulted to their face. My only real safe space remained my cousins. That was until I got a boyfriend. I was terrified to bring him home, but my parents insisted. And of course, it blew up in my face. My boyfriend found me in a panic, saying my sister had flirted with him wearing next to nothing, batting her lashes, bad-mouthing me, the whole act. When I confronted my parents, she flipped the story and claimed he tried to flirt with her, and guess who they believed? Not me, not the boy, her. I believed him not because he was perfect, but because I knew my sister. I knew her game. And even though I hated feeling this way, I admit it, part of me felt validated that she couldn't manipulate him, that someone saw through her. Let's talk about looks for a second. My parents were overweight, and their way of showing love was through food. My sister was raised on treats and indulgence. I, on the other hand, was usually punished by being denied those same treats. I was skinny not by choice but because affection in my house was conditional. That dynamic shaped how we looked and, eventually, how we were treated. My sister wasn't exactly graceful or seductive, She was spoiled, entitled, and so out of touch with effort that even her attempts at flirting were cringeworthy. I knew my boyfriend wouldn't cheat with her, but none of that mattered to my parents. They labeled him a bad influence and forbade me from seeing him. We tried to keep things going in secret, but the pressure crushed us. We broke up. It happened again with my next boyfriend, and again, my sister pulled the same trick, accused him of hitting on her when he turned her down, and again, my parents believed her and used it as proof that I had poor judgment. Eventually, I became the girl who would make out with boys but never date them. Word got around. The slut rumors started. But weirdly, they never reached my parents. My sister brought home a boyfriend once during this time, and my parents acted like she'd landed a prince. They wouldn't shut up about how wonderful he was and how I should be more like her, until, of course, he disappeared. Then, suddenly, he was the villain. That pattern of favoritism continued. She got more money, better curfews, more freedom. I was still locked down like a prisoner. When I brought up the unfairness, I was told, she's older. But when I reached her age, those rules didn't change. When I pointed it out, they denied ever saying it. Gaslighting 101. Eventually, college loomed. She barely made it into a no-name school, no scholarships, terrible grades, but we had a full-blown celebration. My parents promised to pay for everything. I was just relieved she'd be gone. But of course, she came home every other weekend with new drama and reasons to make my life hell. Then came my graduation talk. My mother sat me down and said they had no money left to support my education. I should just get a job. Maybe later, after my sister graduated, they'd see if they could help. And if I stayed home, I'd have to pay rent. I mentioned student loans, and she shut it down. They would decide if a school was worth me going into debt for because I clearly couldn't make good choices. I didn't flinch. I calmly accepted everything. I think they were waiting for a meltdown, some emotional outburst they could use to justify never helping me. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. I just nodded and said, I understood. My dad tried the same manipulation later. Still, I stayed calm. Truth was, I'd never expected them to support me. I'd spent years preparing for this. With all my free time thanks to a non-existent social life, I studied hard. College wasn't just a dream, it was my escape. And I got out. I earned a full scholarship to a decent university. It wasn't Ivy League, but it was mine. I didn't tell them directly. I posted it on social media with a fake thank you to them, knowing it would force them to play nice in front of the family. At first, they acted proud. But then my sister found out, and just like that, everything changed. I thought I'd seen the worst my family was capable of. Turns out, I had barely scratched the surface. Right after I announced my scholarship and college plans, my parents slipped up. They let it out that my sister wasn't doing well in school. And instead of rooting for me, they warned me that since she was smarter and had better judgment, I'd probably fail worse. That was their way of encouraging me. Cruelty disguised as concern, but I held my ground. I had worked too hard for this escape, and college. It saved me. Finally, I was beginning to feel like a person. I still talked to my parents here and there, visited during holidays, but I kept my distance. I avoided bringing any man around them like the plague, and then came the moment that would set everything in motion. My sister dropped out of college. No surprise. Really, if she'd graduated, the whole neighborhood would have heard about it. Instead, she moved back home rent-free, of course, and landed a job at my mom's company thanks to a little nepotism magic. They spun the whole thing as a proud success story. Around this time, I met him, my now husband. You know those people who always say, if I were in that situation, I'd stand up for myself. He's the rare kind who actually does it, where I freeze up, overthink, and cry in frustration. He claps back in real time. He's fierce, protective, and sharp, and I love him for it. When we got serious and started talking marriage, we both agreed no over-the-top wedding. We'd rather splurge on a European honeymoon than stress about flower arrangements. Since my family was still based in my hometown, and we weren't far, we chose to host the wedding there for convenience. We sent out engagement announcements and saved the dates. Naturally, my parents demanded to meet my fiancé. I hesitated. The distance had blurred some of the memories. I started wondering if maybe they weren't as awful as I remembered. My husband saw right through that. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. He was already preparing. He even bought a covert recorder, anticipating drama. He was ready. He went alone, and when he came back, he was practically glowing. "Babe," he said, "you won't believe what they asked. We're going to destroy them. No flirting from my sister this time. No weird tension. Instead, they sat him down and made a proposal they would pay for our wedding. If, and this is real, my sister could walk down the aisle first in a wedding dress. Their reasoning: it wasn't right for the younger sister to marry first. So, she'd get to live the fantasy dress. Pictures, flowers, cake, and all at my expense. When he told me, I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. I wanted to cry, to scream, but my husband, he was smiling. His eyes lit up with a fire I hadn't seen before. And that's when we started planning. It began as a fantasy, talking through wild revenge ideas like giving them the wrong venue or staging an elaborate meltdown. But when we called my husband's calm, rational brother for input, he reeled us back in. He reminded us we could get sued, and that if we wanted to win, we had to be smart. So we picked the most subtle, effective plan. Let them think they'd won, pretend to go along, milk them for every cent, and then slam the door shut. My husband went back to them and said he didn't think I'd be thrilled, but I was non-confrontational. So maybe, if I was surprised by the switch, I wouldn't protest too much. He even planted the idea that since they were paying, I'd feel too grateful to object. My parents were sold. My sister. She skipped with joy, like an actual child. And from there, we began our long con. To sell it, my husband played the role of a guy whipped by his jealous, controlling fiancé. He told them I checked his phone, that I was paranoid from past relationships, that I hated conflict and wouldn't cause a scene. He begged them to keep everything verbal, because I was so suspicious. I'd snoop if I ever saw anything in writing. It was the perfect cover. They bought it, hook, line, and sinker. Meanwhile, we played puppet masters behind the scenes. Every time we picked vendors, we'd choose the cheapest option. Then, my husband would secretly take my sister there, pretend to be disappointed that we couldn't afford better, and wait. She'd complain to my parents, who would then rush to upgrade everything as a gift. We got top-tier food, drinks, photography, flowers, all on their dime, and they thought they were helping manipulate me. When it came to the wedding dress, my mom wanted me to wear something I hated. We were going to fake acceptance and then just not use it, but she sent confirmation in a text. That forced our hand. I had to reply in writing and reject it outright. My husband then went in and faked disappointment. My sister even suggested destroying my real dress so I'd have to wear the one they wanted. He pretended to be torn, and they believed it. The manipulation continued. Any time my sister messaged him, I made sure to reply instead, reinforcing the illusion that I was paranoid and unhinged. I found the whole thing hilarious. Even when my sister made her inevitable move trying to flirt with my husband, he played along just enough to keep the deception going. He acted unsure, conflicted. He never told them about the security guards we hired to stop their stunt at the wedding. That was our secret weapon. It was absurd. We'd considered a courthouse wedding just to save money, and now we were getting this lavish, over-the-top celebration for free. My husband called it emotional back pay. And honestly, I agreed. Watching him drive for hours to discuss fake wedding details with people who'd done nothing but hurt me, all while grinning ear to ear, was something I never imagined. He was in his element, planning revenge, outsmarting them at every turn. And finally, after months of preparation, the big day was just around the corner. My parents, my sister, and even some extended family were all in on their plan to wait until everyone was seated for the ceremony. Then let my sister make her grand entrance in a wedding dress before me. They thought it would be a surprise. They thought they'd finally turned my wedding into her spotlight. But what they didn't know was we had turned the whole thing into their downfall. It was supposed to be my moment, my day, but my family had other plans so outrageous, it felt like something ripped out of a twisted soap opera. My sister was going to hijack my wedding by arriving in a full wedding dress and walking down the aisle before me. My parents knew. They were all in on it. But what they didn't know was we had planned everything. They thought they could blindside me. That if she walked the aisle first, I'd be too shocked to stop her, and by the time I found out, it would be too late. But my husband had already faked destroying my wedding dress. He brought scraps from the alteration to my parents as proof. Then, he told them he had to run home to calm me down. What they didn't know was that our actual dress was hanging safely in my closet, untouched and perfect. On the big day, everything looked normal at first. Our guests arrived. My parents strolled in, and a calm woman at the front door quietly checked everyone off a guest list. They didn't suspect a thing. What they didn't see was the real surprise security. A professional-looking guy we'd hired and briefed in full. His one job, keep my sister out. No exceptions. We even promised him a hefty bonus to stay discreet. Right before things were supposed to start, my dad got the text my sister was 5 minutes away. He signaled the bridesmaids to begin, just like we'd expected. They had been instructed to follow his lead, so it looked like everything was going to plan. Then, I made my entrance. A friend of ours, not in the bridal party but fully in on the scheme, sent me the go text. The bridal song played. The doors swung open and there I was. My dad stood at the end of the aisle, waiting for someone else. When he saw me, his face dropped. Panic. He tried to look past me, as if searching for my sister behind me, but he couldn't see the front gate from inside. Then, his phone rang. It was her. He muttered, something came up, and walked away, leaving me at the entrance of my own wedding. The guests gasped. One of my husband's friends, also in on the plan, played her part perfectly. "What happened?" she asked, loud enough for the room to hear, and then I delivered the line we had rehearsed. I choked back real tears and said, "He told me it wasn't supposed to be me walking down the aisle." My voice cracked not just for dramatic effect, but because deep down, some part of me still didn't think they'd go through with it. That tiny sliver of hope shattered. The friend didn't let the moment die. She yelled again. "What did he mean? It shouldn't be you." Then she stormed out, pretending to check on what was happening. But her real mission was to cause chaos at the gate and keep my dad distracted. And she delivered. Meanwhile, my mother disappeared. 2. My husband's dad, prepared for just this moment, came rushing up the aisle and offered me his arm. His smile was warm and steady. It helped me breathe. We walked slowly to the altar, guests whispering around us. Some even left to find out what was going on. But when I reached my husband, all the fear melted away. He grinned and whispered, "Your sad face was so real. You deserve an Oscar. Don't worry, Lowell. I'll roast them later." And we got married. No interruptions. No sister in sight. But I noticed people slipping in and out of the reception, and no one told me why. My husband stepped out for a moment and came back seething but smiling like nothing was wrong. I'd learn everything later. My sister had shown up, in a wedding dress, full glam. The security guard stopped her cold. She demanded to enter, and he calmly said she must be in the wrong place. There was already a bride inside. My dad arrived, yelling threats, even threatening to call the police. The guard, unfazed, encouraged him to go ahead. He was working for us, after all. That's when my friend stormed the scene, shouting accusations and insults, stalling for time and ensuring no one made it back to interfere with our ceremony. My mom showed up. Others followed and the plan completely unraveled. Guests were livid. People shouted, asking how they could do this to me. My parents panicked and turned on my husband, claiming he had orchestrated it and then betrayed them. That's when he stepped in, wearing the best confused face I've ever seen. He played dumb. "What? Why would I ever agree to something that insane?" he asked, stunned. They couldn't prove anything. They had no messages, no contracts, nothing. All the planning had been verbal. My sister, humiliated, started scream-crying and throwing a full-blown tantrum on the floor. My dad tried to go after my husband but got held back by security and some concerned guests. My husband looked them dead in the eye and said, "Wow, how convenient that you can't prove anything." Then he turned to the crowd and tore into my parents for being cruel, manipulative, and disrespectful. Finally, he said, "This is our wedding. You won't ruin this, too," and walked away. Most of the guests didn't buy their story for a second. Some even filmed it. The venue wouldn't release the security footage, but those phone clips were enough. Seeing the very people who had gaslit and shamed me my entire life get called out, that was the sweetest revenge. My sister was still sobbing on the pavement. My dad looked ready to explode, and my mom had gone ghostly pale. People grilled them with questions. Why would your daughter do this? Why didn't you stop her? Why would you want to ruin a wedding? They had no answers. Eventually, they were asked to leave. My dad had to drag my sister off the ground. I didn't hear a word of it until much later. At the reception, people were kind. For once, they treated me like the bride, like I mattered. And yeah, maybe the gourmet food and open bar helped, but still it felt good. Later that night, we crashed at the hotel, exhausted and buzzing. My husband joked that he enjoyed the chaos more than the actual ceremony, and, honestly, same. As for the honeymoon, my parents had offered to pay for our tickets, but we declined. We didn't trust them not to sabotage it, and we were right. My sister messaged me while we were away. I won't share the full contents because, frankly, they were unhinged. She blamed me for her humiliation, called my husband a snake, and accused him of cheating on me. With her, yep, delusion level expert. My husband screenshotted everything, the call logs, the threats, the breakdown texts, and blasted it all into our extended family group chat. He even included messages where my parents called him names and accused him of betrayal. Then, he played the ultimate move. He asked for help. He wrote, "Please, I'm begging for your support. They're trying to ruin our honeymoon now that they failed to ruin the wedding. Please don't share our location." The group rallied behind us. Since then, radio silence. My husband is a little sad. My sister didn't break the silence just so he could clap back again. But so far, she's stayed away. I wish I had a normal family. I wish they could have stood beside me on one of the most meaningful days of my life. But at least for once they failed to ruin something. And even better, I got my revenge. As for why they treated me like this, I've asked myself that question more times than I can count. I used to think it was something I did wrong. But now, I suspect I was just an accident. A second baby born too soon, unwanted, a burden when they weren't ready. Meanwhile, my sister was their miracle, their perfect firstborn. And I was the one they resented for showing up uninvited to the life they had planned. But that doesn't excuse what they did. Nothing does. They thought they could ruin my wedding. Instead, they made it unforgettable for all the right reasons. In the aftermath of all the chaos after my sister was dragged away sobbing in a wedding dress, my parents were publicly humiliated, and the dust began to settle. My husband and I lay in our honeymoon suite, laughing at just how deep their manipulation had gone. The worst part. We almost believed they were just evil enough to try hijacking my wedding purely out of malice. But the truth, as we pieced it together, was somehow even more pathetic. We realized that this entire scheme may not have even started as a full plan to ruin me. No, it was likely something more cowardly, more manipulative in a quiet, insidious way. My sister, angry, jealous, and wildly insecure, probably lost it when she found out I was getting married first. This was someone who could barely hold down a date, who had spent her life treating me like competition in a race I never signed up for. And now, here I was, happy, in love, and moving forward. It must have made her blood boil. So what did she do? She threw a tantrum, a massive, dramatic, manipulative tantrum, and my parents. They caved. We believe they never really intended to make this happen. Their proposal for her to walk down the aisle first in a wedding dress at my wedding. It wasn't just evil, it was a calculated move, one we think was designed to be refused. They figured my husband would be as disgusted as any sane person and immediately shut it down. Then, they could go back to my sister and say, "See, we tried, but they wouldn't let us." That way, they could pretend to support her outrageous demands while also getting out of paying for my wedding. It was manipulation in its purest form, but they underestimated us. They didn't think for a second my husband would play along. That he'd nod and smile and say, "Sure, I'll talk to her," while secretly plotting their public downfall. The moment he said yes, their plan blew up in their faces. They couldn't backtrack. If they did, my sister would have turned on them next. So they were stuck in their own web of lies, forced to support a plan they never truly believed in, or else risk losing their golden child's affection. And that's what makes this all the more satisfying. They thought they were using us, playing both sides, keeping their favorite daughter coddled and catered to while punishing me, yet again, by refusing to support my marriage. But instead, they backed themselves into a corner and gave us the one thing they never meant to control. We used their scheme against them, took every manipulative tactic, every guilt trip, every lie, and turned it into our victory. My sister walked away a disgrace. My parents walked away in shame. And me, I walked down that aisle, smiling through the whispers, hand in hand with the only person who had ever really fought for me, my husband. And that's the real ending to this story, not just the revenge or the drama or the spectacle, but the quiet, powerful truth. For the first time in my life, I didn't just survive what they threw at me, I won. At the heart of this story lies a powerful lesson about resilience, self-worth, and the ability to reclaim one's narrative after a lifetime of emotional abuse. The protagonist grew up in a toxic family dynamic where favoritism, manipulation, and gaslighting were the norm. For years, she was conditioned to believe she didn't deserve support, celebration, or fairness, only to later discover that she held more strength and agency than her abusers ever imagined. Through her partnership with a compassionate and assertive husband, she not only found emotional refuge but also discovered the courage to stand up to lifelong injustice. This story teaches us that sometimes healing begins not with confrontation, but with clarity, the kind that comes from seeing things as they truly are and refusing to let the past define your future. It's a reminder that we are not obligated to maintain ties with those who mistreat us, simply because they are family. Instead, we are allowed to protect our peace, set boundaries, and surround ourselves with people who honor our worth. It also reveals how manipulation can often be masked as a compromise, and how silence or passivity in the face of mistreatment is not noble, it's damaging. But when you rise, when you choose dignity over compliance, and truth over illusion, you don't just survive, you thrive. This story encourages anyone who has ever felt invisible in their own family to believe that their voice matters, their boundaries are valid, and their happiness is not a privilege, it's a right. In the end, justice isn't always loud or legal. Sometimes, it's as simple and as profound as walking down your own aisle on your own terms, while those who tried to control your story watch their power quietly slip away. And that's the end of the story. What a wild ride from heartbreak to justice. If you got any value from this video, please take a moment to comment one down below. It really helps the channel and lets us know you're part of this incredible community. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this video with someone who might need a little reminder that standing up for yourself is always worth it. We'd also love to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Were you shocked, inspired, angry? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's talk about it. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, your story matters, your voice matters, and no one gets to steal your moment. See you in the next one.